Welcome to the selfgrowth.com show. My name is David Riklan, and I'm the founder of selfgrowth.com. Today, we'll be discussing parenting and its challenges and where to get help. The focus is coaching for parents, what it is and why is it so important. To help us understand this topic, I'm excited to interview Tina Feigal. Make sure to listen closely. We're going to be sharing a lot of information today. Tina is the Director of Family Engagement at A New Family Services, has coached parents on challenging child behavior and trained parent coaches for nearly 20 years. As a former school psychologist, she realized that while she was evaluating children for emotional and behavioral disorders, the answers could more readily lie in coaching those who love, care for, and teach these children. So she foolishly hung her shingle as a parent coach before there was such a thing and has never looked back. Tina, welcome to our show today.
Thank you so much, David. It's a thrill to be here.
All right, excited. I know we have a lot of information to share, and we're just going to jump right in here. So we're talking about parenting and problems. So what are some of the problems people face with parenting today, and how's that changed? Because this is dynamic, it's changing a lot. So let's jump in with that.
Well, it starts with, some simple things like I can't get my children to eat properly or go to bed on time or get up in the morning. Those things are quite common problems that we deal with as parent coaches. And then it can go all the way to I'm worried about video game addiction, which is the new thing that's so big right now. My children are gaming all the time and not being involved in their lives. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, and then with A New Family Services, that's ANU, A New Family Services, I also work in the treatment foster care realm. So we help the kids who've been moved from home to home to home because of their behavior. And that has been re-traumatizing for the kids every single time. So they suffered the trauma of being removed from their parents and whatever led up to the removal, and then also being moved to a different place because of their behavior. So we help them stay put by coaching the parents who have those kids.
All right, and I know that's a big challenge with kids when they're being moved from home to home, and there's a lot of struggles and a lot of issues, and that's one of the big things that you're preparing, that you kind of prepare parents for, which is very, very important. So I want to talk to you a little bit about parent coaching. So we're going to be talking about parent coaching. So what exactly is the concept, parent coaching?
Parent coaching is a method by which we join parents. We come alongside them and just teach them new ways to interact with their children so that they can get the behaviors that they want and also the relationship that they want. And the relationship is really what drives the behaviors in so many cases. So when we can help heal that relationship by putting the healing in the hands of the parents, the behaviors resolve and the children are easy to live with and everyone's a lot happier. So that's really the crux of it.
So it's interesting. It's almost better to be called relationship coaching between parents and children. That's really the crux of it. Yes. For parent coaching, you're thinking, all right, I'm going to give parents a whole bunch of techniques to develop. But what you're really looking to do is help them develop relationships.
Exactly. Strengthening that relationship.
Okay, that makes total sense. Now, what's the main benefits? Who's benefiting from parent coaching?
I would just say anybody who has children whose behavior is indicating that something's amiss, people who have trouble with their children's behavior, that's pretty much it. And it's all ages of children. It doesn't have to be a specific, preschool or grade school or middle school or high school. It can be any age of children. And I've coached some parents whose children are adults and they're still seeking to strengthen their relationships. And so it can be any age.
Well, that makes sense because there are relationship challenges. I don't care how old the kids are. And what's interesting from my vantage point is the issues that were there in childhood don't necessarily change. They might manifest themselves in different ways, but some of those challenges are still there.
Absolutely.
And it's really about kind of the core, as you mentioned, the core of the relationship that you're focused on versus particular techniques of how to get someone to do something, or it's a little different. So traditionally growing up, I've heard a lot about this family therapy. So either family therapy or child therapy. What makes parenting coaching different from traditional family therapy?
Well, the first thing is that we don't have to diagnose the parents with anything wrong. And we only coach the parents. So we, as I said, place the healing in their hands. So the children don't have to feel like they're on trial, that they did something wrong, there's something wrong with them, that they have a reason to feel ashamed. Parents often don't even tell the kids that they're going through coaching. They just change what they do and the magic occurs. And that's really, it's so much fun to watch. It's so much fun to watch that healing take place. And then what I say to the parents is, I'm blaming these improvements on you. I always give them
like
credit.
that.
Yeah. And I love it that the parents get to take credit for the improvements in the kids' behavior. And it's not a professional outside of us causing us to be better people or labeling us with something wrong. It's just simply coaching, just like if you're playing baseball, run to first base, run to second base, run to third base, do these things, understand the rules of the game better than maybe you used to. And then here are the ways to go about playing it better.
That makes sense. It's interesting for family therapy, and that as you're mentioning, you need to diagnose someone, whether it's the child or the parent, you need to diagnose someone with a specific issue.
Yes.
And that's kind of a starting point, where your starting point is we're helping develop better relationships. We're helping you develop better relationships. And it's not necessarily a diagnosable issue or one that you want to point at and say, well, it's because this person's suffering from depression or anxiety or oppositional defiant disorder, that you're working to kind of treat the relationship.
Yes. And even if the diagnosis exists, we can still be very effective with the coaching, which is really fun as well.
Sure. So you've been doing this for a while. How effective have you found parent coaching? And I know you've been working with a wide range of people and have done some studies on it. So what are you seeing in terms of the use of parent coaching?
Well, we have a pre and post questionnaire that we hand to parents before coaching and after, and it's the same questionnaire. And then we look at the differences between them. And we've done a study recently of 140 parents, and we ask 45 questions on the questionnaire. 40 of them went up in a statistically significant way. So we can say, statistically, we can see the effects of parent coaching. The other 5 were already high enough that they didn't have statistically significant room to move on those questions. So we are seeing actually on paper the results of the coaching, and it's been very exciting. In the child welfare realm, when we talk about kids being moved from home to home, I mean, I coach all parents. I coach anybody who wants to be coached, but I also work in the child welfare realm. And it's interesting to see that after coaching, 91% of the children are stable in their homes, which is phenomenal to see that we're able to help them stay put.
Well, how does that compare? So 91% sounds unusually high. How does that compare to people who aren't going to children in situations who are not going through any kind of coaching, any kind of assistance?
There aren't really statistics on children who enter foster care on how stable they are. No one has really been able to keep track of that because it's such a fast moving thing. But anyway, there aren't any studies that say how many children reach permanence once they go into foster care. But it's thought by the gurus of the field to be about a 20 to 30% rate of permanence for those kids.
So going from 20 to 30%, going from that area, that range to 90%, just phenomenal.
Yes. And it's I just, sometimes when I have presented this, I think, if I was listening to this woman, I wouldn't be sure she's telling the truth about this, but it really is what we found. So. Well,
you hear stories. I'm not in that area personally, but you hear a lot of stories about children just being bounced throughout their whole childhood.
Yes.
Which is a major issue, because we all know that if children are bounced from family to family and brought up in a somewhat unstable environment, they're not going to necessarily likely grow up to be productive adults, successful, happy, productive people. So this is really a game changer in that area. And by virtue of that, something having that much impact is sure to have impact in a family where the kids are with their own parents,
Yes.
or in some sort of structured family.
Mhm.
So the techniques must be working in a powerful way. But what I want to talk to you, I want to delve a little bit into what you do for parent coaching. So you have this concept called, I think it's called present moment parenting.
Yes.
So what is that method? What does it look like? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, present moment parenting is a set of approaches that I have created over the almost 20 years that I've been coaching parents. I have a book by the same title that's on Amazon, and a downloadable ebook. Oh no, it's a audiobook as well. So
Okay.
uh, so present moment parenting involves just helping the parents really understand what is going on with the behavior, that it's not just bratty kids, that it's not just kids who are defiant and oppositional just because they feel like it, or because they're bad kids, or something has gone wrong with them. It's really that children fundamentally are trying to survive. And if they look to their parents, and they're dependent on those parents for survival,
Sure.
uh, and they see that their parents really see them in the present moment, in the state that they're in right now, then they can relax and they don't have to be oppositional and defiant and all the things that we see. If they're not feeling seen by their parents, then they have to rattle their cage. They have to make some kind of movement to get their attention,
Sure.
to be sure that they're going to survive. And this is all really happening at a physiological level. It's not really a decision that the child is making. So that's the thing that we take out of the equation, that it's willful on the part of the child. So it could be as minor as, my child has trouble going to bed at night. So I would teach the parents how to really tune into the feelings of that child and to just be present by just reflective listening. You're really worried about going to sleep tonight. You think that something might happen while you're sleeping. And this feels counterintuitive to most parents. This feels like I might be reinforcing their fear, but actually
Right.
what you're doing is actively listening and reflecting that you're listening, which says to the child's brain, I'm going to survive. My mom sees me. My dad sees me. And then they can relax. So it's something that I just thought of this term a couple of weeks ago, physio-relational. It has a lot to do with the physiology of what's going on inside the child. And the relationship can be really healed when you understand the physiological pieces. So I started years ago talking about the effect of communication on the child's body. And so parents are maybe on different pages. One parent is being harder on the child and one parent's being easier on the child, and they're in conflict because they can't get to common ground. And I say to them, I'm not going to agree with you, and I'm not going to agree with you. I'm going to give you a third thing,
Right.
which is this physiological approach, so that you can come together and actually heal the issues that are going on.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. What's interesting, so I'm a parent. I have 3 teenage kids, and there are times as a parent where you're overwhelmed and you go in some sort of automatic mode, or almost reflexive mode, when there's an issue or there's a problem, they're not going to bed, whatever it particularly is. And it sounds to me like you're teaching people to kind of stop,
Yep.
stop and listen as a first step, versus the reflex is, all right, something happened and you're reflexively taking an action or saying something and being in a mood. And that almost sounds like a first step for present moment parenting, to teach parents to do that.
Yes, to stop and be in the present moment, which involves not thinking that the past is still here and it's going to repeat itself in the future, but to use what we have. Eckhart Tolle wrote the book, The Power of Now, and all our power actually is in the present moment. So if we connect with the child on the present feeling, that's where our power is to make the future better.
Right.
If we string a bunch of those wonderful present moments together, the future is going to take care of itself.
Makes total sense. Now, if people want to get more detail about what you teach, your present moment parenting, your programs, what's the best place? Is there a resource that you have? Where should people go?
The website is parentingmojo.com, and they can go to About and then Parent Coaching if they're interested in coaching. I also have a blog, so they can read articles on that. I also train parent coaches, so if they go to About, they can see Become a Parent Coach. They can find out information about that. Lots of good stuff on that site.
All right, so a good starting point for people is parentingmojo.com.
Yes.
So parentingmojo.com. We'll also put a link out there for folks. So we're talking parenting, and I love this, the kind of the present moment parenting. And that applies to everything, because most of us are not in the present moment in any part of our life. So parenting is just one particular relationship where we're not in it, where we're immediately thinking this happened yesterday, or this is going to continue happening, or the problems. So this present moment parenting absolutely applies. Can you give us some quick tips? So obviously you work with parents constantly and families. Some additional quick tips. You mentioned in terms of listening, some other quick tips that might come to mind. And I just want to remind people, a lot more detail is on the website, so I want you to go there. And also, if you want to find out about Tina's programs and how to work with her and what they have available, go to the website. But as a kind of a starting point, some other quick parenting tips.
All right, so one of the things I really encourage people to do is have a regular family meeting, because what we do is we live life along with these children and we expect things to go well. And when they don't, we get upset, but we forgot to include the players in what are we doing here? I mean, everywhere you work, everywhere you worship, a city, county, state, federal, international government, everybody meets and talks about their process, except the most important unit in society, the family. So having regular family meetings where you just have a talking piece, and whoever has the talking piece talks and whoever doesn't listens. You're either a talker or a listener through that whole meeting, and you can come together and make decisions, share good things, what you love about being in the family. And then also, if there's a chronic issue, we're having issues at bedtime, let's talk about how we're going to solve that together. And this accomplishes so many things. First of all, children don't have to live in quiet desperation that no one's ever going to, solve our problems, and parents don't have to either. And it also includes the kids in the decision-making process, which is what you want when your children grow up. You want decision makers and not just order followers. And so it includes them in the process, which is very respectful, and it draws the child toward you instead of pushing the child away. I have 10 tenets of present moment parenting, and one of them is you're either always drawing the child toward you or pushing the child away.
But what's interesting, just to jump in here for a second, I would imagine for these meetings, so sometimes the meetings are the two parents are kind of, they decided they're on the same page and they're lecturing their kids. Yes. So that's one type of meeting. But what you seem to be saying is this present moment parenting, you should probably have a present moment meeting, yes, family meeting, where you're listening, you're fully there, here and now. Is that I assume that applies to that also.
That's right. And what you referred to earlier, slowing down and just being present with our process, which is what we do for work meetings, right? We set an agenda and we come in and we just are present for what's going on in our work, but we just don't think to do that with our families. But we're the most important unit in society, so we must think in terms of operating with mindfulness rather than just expecting it to go along and getting mad when it doesn't.
That makes total sense. So the meetings, obviously being present, the meetings, and you have one more quick tip for folks.
Yeah, I like to encourage people to give kids positive feedback when things are going well, because the more you do that, the more of the good behavior you're going to see. We all know that if you get rewards, emotional rewards for behaviors, you're going to repeat those rewards, whether you're an adult or a child, or repeat those behaviors, I should say. And so when you, I feel, because is a really good way to give input to kids on the good stuff. So when you speak to your brother in such a nice tone of voice, I feel on top of the world, because it just shows me what a great big brother you can be.
Right.
And we have a tendency to focus on when things aren't going well. So
Sure.
I just want to help people shift to when things are going well, to really work on getting more of that good behavior by noticing, stopping, noticing, giving the feedback. And it's not praise. I don't like the word praise because it sort of denotes a hierarchy, like I'm above you and I'm going to praise your good behavior
Right.
now.
I got that.
And this is how my heart feels when you do that, which is relational, strengthens the relationship.
It's more like, it sounds more like showing appreciation
Yes,
than praising someone.
exactly.
Okay.
Heartfelt appreciation is the name of it. Yes.
Okay, there you go. Aptly named. I like it. So I know there's a few areas you work in. So one of the areas you work directly with parents
Yes.
to help them and help, as you mentioned, develop and better relationships with their kids. So it's about developing better relationships. But I know you also have a kind of parenting coach certification class.
Yes.
Where you certify, and assume you work with other coaches, you work with therapists. Can you tell us a little bit about this coach certification program?
Yes, it's online. It's on Zoom, just like this. And it's 10 months, 1 day a month. So, and it's from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's a long day. And there are assignments, but people have a whole month to get the assignments done. So it's not horrible. And I work with a lot of professionals who are therapists who are looking to change to a different profession, people who are already in the child welfare realm and want to just strengthen their skills. So it could be anybody. I just require a 4-year degree in a child-related field. And sometimes I even use discretion on that, and people can come in if they've got background that is appropriate. So.
Okay, that makes sense. And when's your next, well, a couple things. Where can people get more detail? And then when's your next, is there an upcoming coach certification program coming up? Tell us a little bit more detail.
Yes, people can get information from parentingmojo.com and then and then become a parent coach. So that's easy. And then the next program starts, well, actually I just started one, September 26th, last Thursday. People could still get in on that one if they wanted to join late, but the next one hasn't really been planned yet, but I'm thinking April for the next 10 months start. And sometimes people are at work and their company will pay for them to go through the parenting coach certification, and they need the lead time to get the funds to do it. So
makes sense.
Knowing that it's coming in April is good. If people want the information about when the next start date is, they can go to parentingmojo.com and just click on join our newsletter. And then every month I send out the newsletter so they'll know. Or they can just email me at tina@parentingmojo.com.
Easy enough. All right. A few other things I want to cover. So you mentioned this briefly, I think, physio-relational parenting. So what exactly, can you go in a little more detail about that?
Yeah, it really has to do with the way that the limbic system is formed. And that's the system in our bodies that helps us, in our brains, that helps us survive. And the amygdala particularly is this little walnut-sized organ deep in the brain where it's protected because it's about survival. That helps the child know whether there's a threat or not.
Right.
And if a child has had a big threat to their lives, the amygdala will continue to fire even when the child seems safe. So what we have to do is work on specific techniques for connecting with that child over time to help him or her feel safe. And it calms the amygdala down. The prefrontal cortex up here in the front of the brain is where we make good decisions based on our past experiences. And kids' prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until they're 25 if they're males and 22 if they're females. And if they've had trauma, it's going to be longer because trauma delays development. So what we do is just help to strengthen that amygdala calming and the prefrontal cortex coming online. I often say that they are in the same skull. They're neighbors, but they never talk to each other, and
Right.
they never operate at the same time. So either the amygdala is firing and the child is acting up, trying to get the attention of the adults for survival, or the prefrontal cortex is online and the child's making good decisions based on past experience. So oftentimes I hear people say, make a better choice, make a better choice. And really, this is physiological. The child doesn't have
Right.
control over that amygdala response. So if we can help them in between, when there's no issue, I always coach parents to talk to their kids when there's no issue about these things and help them feel safe, then the amygdala doesn't have to fire and the prefrontal cortex comes online.
That makes sense. And it makes sense to me, particularly because we all experience some level of trauma in our lives. And as parents, you don't necessarily know what level of trauma or what caused trauma in your kids. You might think, oh, that's fine. That wasn't a big deal in terms of something that happened, but it might have been something traumatic for the kid.
Exactly. We have to really see things through the child's eyes. Exactly right. What you're saying.
So that makes total sense. And we're like, well, I dealt with that when I was a kid and it wasn't an issue. And you're like, no, every child's different. And you need to understand there's certain things in terms of the impact that you're just not going to know. It's not going to be overtly obvious to you.
And what I find is that children are much more sensitive than parents realize in many, many cases. Boys and girls alike are much more sensitive than we realize. And we have a tendency to want them to just carry on. Come on, let's go. Let's do our thing, get
Sure.
over it, And we don't stay in the present moment where that feeling is there that's blocking their ability to comply with what parents are asking for. Right. So we can get to it. We can always get to it. I have tons of hope for every child. I have tons of hope.
That's good.
So much healing along the way.
I like it. So in terms of what you do, you work with your coach parents, you train professionals, certified coaches. Why do you do this? Why is this your focus? Why you started talking, I mentioned earlier, you've been doing it a long time. Why do you do this?
I do this because it's where my heart leads me every single day. I had a pretty traumatic childhood myself, and I speak from experience. I also have a son who went through a trauma time in his life with cancer. So I'm not just somebody who read a book about it or who wrote a book about it, which I did, but I'm somebody who's been there. And my son is fine now, but we went through a really intense period of life when he was only 7 years old. So it just helped me understand that this is my life path. One day I just stood in the kitchen and I went, everything that's happened to me now has led me to this place, and I am a parent coach, so it was a very memorable moment.
I like it. One of the challenges that I just see in general in our society is people are almost giving up parenting and they're pushing it off to other people, as whether it's the school system, the community as a responsibility, but it's the parents' response. You can't relinquish or give up your parenting responsibilities. They're yours.
That's right. And if we know that better, then, and if we know how to do it, I think a lot of times there's relinquishment because parents just don't know what to do.
Sure.
And they get fully on board when they get some tools. And so that's what the transition I love to watch is that, okay, now I know what to do. Now I'm in, but if I didn't know what to do, I just don't know how to dedicate myself to this,
That makes sense. All right. So just to remind everybody, the website is parentingmojo.com. And you have a ton of information today, Tina. Do you have any final words today before we finish up?
Well, I would just really like to thank you, David, for all the work you do on selfgrowth.com for helping people to bring themselves to a happier life. And I mean, I do the same thing, you do the same thing. And I just so appreciate this ability to have the interview and the opportunity to speak with you. I just thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you for the job you're doing and the mission you're on. It's a very important one. Thank you for joining us today. And I'd like to thank everybody for listening. And I wish everybody great success, not only with your parenting, but all areas of your life. We'll talk to everybody soon. All right. Take care.